they can argue, well, the fastest bird in a nosedive could go that fast. So back up. We have an object that is colder than the surface of the ocean. That immediately gets rid of the bird theory, because a bird would be hypothermic and drop like a paperweight into the water. It cannot fly at that. So that's the piece of information I would attack that debunking with.
But this video, when you're watching that, if it is going 200 miles an hour, that's not outside of what's possible with spacecraft or aircraft or just planes.
Right, but it's cold.
I understand that.
That's pretty cool.
But it's very interesting. But it's not moving anywhere near as fast as the Tic Tac.
No. This is just something, because this is part, and George can tell you, this was part of a much bigger series of events. So like the gimbal craft itself, that's another debunking thing. They said it's a plane banking away and you're seeing it through thermal. First of all, talk with the pilot. Not fucking so.
This is the gimbal.
Yeah, the gimbal.
It's pulling it up right now. And how fast is this thing supposed to be going?
You know, the speed, from what I recall, wasn't registered on the radar. It's not that it's going fast. If you talk with the pilots, it was rotating. It was spinning like a top, and for like 11 hours without refueling. I mean, the thing was just sitting out there. This was not this is an occurrence that happened over a course of many, many weeks. Now, when it rotates like that, the debunking theory is that you're seeing a plane bank. So as if our military doesn't know what another plane is. Other planes look very different when you see them through thermal. This thing was self-rotating, and I just did an interview.
And how fast is this, or rather, how warm is this thing supposed to be? Is this supposed to actually be hot?
I am unaware.
Because you're looking at it through thermal, right?
Yeah, I'm unaware of the specifics of that one when it comes to heat. All I know is that it is self-actuating. It is not something that is a glare or flare of a heat signature making it look like it's turning. The actual craft is self-actuating.
And what is that halo around it?
That's just an artifact of the FLIR thermal. It's not.
The premise that the U.S. government would tell you, all right, look, we're going to release these videos reluctantly. Lou Elizondo is the guy that got them released, and then the U.S. government formally released them a couple of months ago. The idea that the U.S. government would release it, the Pentagon says these are unidentified. If it was a bird or a jet engine, the pilots would not have the kind of reaction that they had that you can hear on the audio.
Yeah.
Our government does not tell members of Congress. The Pentagon doesn't go to the Senate Intelligence Committee, show them those videos and say, yeah, it's unidentified if it isn't. And, the reaction of the pilots, the fact that they were forced to release it to begin with, suggests it really is unidentified.
Why do you think they've addressed it? Why do you think that they have addressed the fact they're studying these things? Why not just continue denying it?
I think they were forced to. And some props to Tom DeLonge. I know you guys had a pretty spirited conversation when he was here, but he created an organization. Lou Elizondo, who ran that program, came forward and brought with him those videos. I saw them 2 days after Lou Elizondo stepped on a stage with Tom and said, I was in charge of the program. He and Chris Mellon have been sort of the engineers of getting that story into the New York Times. That changed everything. As I said, the last 2.5 years, everything has turned on its head. The New York Times covers the story. The result is other media covered as well. They've been ignoring it forever, and that allowed people to keep these secrets. That pressure meant that people in Congress started asking questions. 2 days after the story came out, I interviewed Senator Harry Reid, who was the one who got the money to create that program that became ATIP. And he said his phone had been ringing off the hook from other members of Congress who are now suddenly interested. I didn't know there was a program, they're telling him. How do we learn more about this? It started a series of closed-door briefings on Capitol Hill that continue to this day. The pilots, like Dave Fravor, were hauled before Congress, first in front of the staff of the Senate Intelligence and then Senate Armed Services, and then the elected members, these senators who get briefed on it, and they were impressed, and they wanted more pilots to come in. So it's been going on for 2.5 years, and 2 weeks ago, about a month ago now, the culmination of it, Senator Marco Rubio, who is now the chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, drops this bill. And it's the budget for the intelligence budget for next year, and he includes a UFO provision in there. Congress wants to have a mechanism set up where we get regular briefings from the Pentagon on UFOs. That's an astonishing change of events. It's because the media pressure and then congressional interest. it made it more acceptable for everybody to pursue the subject matter. It's kind of out of the shadows, and the Pentagon has reacted in fits and starts. So sometimes, as they said to the New York Times, that program ended. Had nothing to do with UFOs. At first they said it did, then they said it didn't. They've admitted Lou Elizondo worked on the program, then they said he didn't. They've said that the OSAP, which is the other program, the mother program that became ATEP, that had nothing to do with UFOs. What it did. So they continue to sort of lie and obfuscate and muddy the waters. But the fact is that there's too much momentum from media and Congress and the public to hide this anymore.
You should tell Joe about how the government program OSAP was created directly because George wrote this book about a little place called Skinwalker Ranch where the government was studying this property. That happened because of his book. Some DIA guys. Well, you should tell the story of
I visited that place.
Yeah, but right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I think you got I think you got a little misled on this.
Tell him how the government study started. From your work. It's fascinating.
So some of it stems back to Lazar. So we did that story in the series in '89. One of the first people to call me after that was a guy I'd never heard of before named Robert Bigelow, a billionaire. He calls me up and says, I was really interested in that. I've been interested in UFOs for a long time. Can I help you? Meaning, can he help fund me? I said, I work for a TV station. I don't need any help. But he was not to be deterred. He then reached out to Lazar. They had he started meeting with him and pumping him for information. And that really amplified Bigelow's lifelong interest in it. He created something called NIDS, the National Institute for Discovery Science, which he made a science advisory board of the best and the brightest in both the UFO field and the field of consciousness. So they're looking at two questions. Is there life elsewhere in the universe? Is it here? And do humans survive after death? And brilliant little think tank to take on these two topics. I was allowed to be a fly on the wall for some of it. Not all of it, but some. And I told Harry Reid about it in 1996. And he said, can I go? And so he showed up and sat in on the meetings. And he was